The financial markets, a sprawling battlefield that few truly understand. It's a place where fortunes are built, lost, and manipulated in silence, far from the public's view. This is no ordinary game of chance or luck. It is war. A war fought with money as both sword and shield, with strategy more than speculation. At the heart of this war are hedge funds, the invisible generals who wield colossal power. These are not simple investors but complex war machines. They control vast sums of capital, employing tools and tactics designed to influence markets and crush competition. To grasp the billionaire's playbook, you must first understand this battlefield: the weapons, the players, and the relentless strategy. Leverage is one of the most potent weapons in this arsenal. Imagine turning $1 million into 10 or even 100 million, magnifying your power many times over. But leverage is not magic. It's a double-edged sword. If misused, it can obliterate entire fortunes overnight. Mastery over leverage requires discipline and insight few possess. Consider the 2008 financial crisis, when leverage reached dangerous heights across Wall Street. Hedge funds that understood how to manage leverage emerged not only unscathed, but more powerful. They maneuvered like predators, exploiting panic to buy undervalued assets and short-failing institutions. Derivatives, another vital tool. These complex contracts allow hedge funds to place bets on everything from stock prices to interest rates, currencies, even weather patterns. Options, futures, swaps, each offering unique leverage and risk profiles. Think of derivatives as financial weapons of mass manipulation. They allow hedge funds to hedge risk, speculate with high stakes, and even distort market perceptions, all without owning the underlying asset outright. They can create artificial scarcity or abundance, influencing prices subtly but decisively. Short selling, the dark art of profiting from decline. While most investors celebrate rising markets, hedge funds often see opportunity in chaos and fear. They sell borrowed shares, betting prices will fall so they can repurchase cheaper, pocketing the difference. Famous short sellers like Jim Chanos made fortunes betting against Enron and other giants. They anticipate market collapses before the crowd, turning fear into profit. This requires courage and insight, the willingness to swim against the tide, to see value where others see ruin. Dark pools, the secret arenas of trading. These private exchanges allow hedge funds to buy and sell massive blocks of shares away from public scrutiny. Why? Because transparency invites front-running and market reaction. Dark pools mask hedge fund moves, preventing competitors and regulators from seeing their true intentions. They enable stealth manipulation, shifting supply and demand behind the scenes. The average trader never sees these battles, but they shape market prices profoundly. Now, beyond these tools, consider the billionaire's greatest weapon: mindset. Wealth is not merely accumulation, it is domination. Control over markets, control over narratives, control over reality itself. The market is no accident. It is a giant chessboard. Hedge funds are grandmasters, thinking moves ahead, shaping outcomes before they unfold. Each trade is a calculated move. Risk is measured and mitigated. Every moment is a step toward victory. This mindset is essential. No longer a passive observer, but an active strategist, a warrior prepared to engage and conquer. Yet the fiercest battles rage inside. Fear, greed, doubt. These internal enemies threaten every trader. Fear whispers of loss, freezing the mind or forcing rash moves. But the elite transform fear into focus, a tool for decisive action. Greed tempts with reckless ambition, leading many to ruin. The billionaire balances desire with discipline, extracting profit without losing control. Doubt sows hesitation, killing momentum. Billionaires silence doubt with preparation, mental toughness, and unwavering confidence. Picture yourself now, amidst the noise of markets and media distractions. You stand in the shadows, senses alert to subtle shifts others miss. You perceive the subtle moves of central banks altering interest rates, geopolitical tensions disrupting supply chains, algorithmic trades slicing through milliseconds. You are no longer a pawn, but a general commanding forces with cold calculation. The price of entry is high. You must embrace relentless focus, complexity, and calm amid chaos. The market punishes the weak, rewards the patient, and elevates those who think many moves ahead. This is the billionaire mindset, a chess game played on a poker table with global stakes. Ask yourself, are you ready to step into these shadows? To shed illusions sold by the mainstream? To embrace the ruthless clarity of the billionaire strategist? This is your awakening, the first step in the billionaire's playbook. Pause 10 seconds. Now reflect. What unseen forces shape every price, every trade, every fortune? Who truly pulls the strings behind market facades? The battlefield is immense, but victory belongs to those armed with unseen weapons and unshakable discipline. You begin to see beyond the curtain. The market is not your enemy. Ignorance is. Knowledge is your sword. Discipline, your shield. Pause 10 seconds. Let me give you a story. In 2015, a hedge fund quietly amassed a massive position against a major currency. They anticipated a sudden policy shift by a central bank, a move invisible to most traders. When the announcement came, markets crashed, and the hedge fund's position exploded in profit. This was no luck. It was preparation, insight, and patience. This is how billionaires manipulate markets and win. Pause 10 seconds. From here, your journey deepens. You will learn the arsenal of tactics, the mind games, and the hidden systems that control global wealth. For now, absorb this foundation. The war has begun. They call it the free market. But if you've been paying attention, really paying attention, you already know that it's a myth. Behind the curtain, the biggest players on Wall Street, billionaire hedge fund managers, private equity sharks, and algorithmic trading masterminds operate with strategies so powerful, so complex, and so aggressive that the average investor doesn't stand a chance. This is the billionaire's playbook, and stage 1 is about revealing the illusion of the free market, the foundation upon which the rest of their power is built. You've been told markets are fair, that prices are driven by supply and demand, that everyone plays by the same rules. This is the first lie. In reality, the market is a chessboard, and billionaires are playing 12 moves ahead while retail investors are still learning the rules. They have 3 main advantages: information, access to data you'll never see; technology, algorithms capable of executing trades in microseconds; influence, the ability to shape the market itself through sheer capital power. Imagine you could see the order flow of millions of trades before they happen. This isn't fantasy. It's called order flow data, and hedge funds pay tens of millions per year to get it milliseconds earlier than you. That tiny edge lets them front-run trades, predict movements, and profit before the rest of the market even knows what's happening. They also hire entire teams of analysts, quants, and even ex-intelligence operatives to map out geopolitical trends, corporate secrets, and economic shifts. While the public waits for news headlines, they've already placed billion-dollar bets based on insider-level intelligence. High-frequency trading, HFT, is their weapon of choice. While you click buy or sell on your brokerage app, their algorithms have executed thousands of trades in less than the blink of an eye, exploiting price discrepancies you all never even notice. These algorithms operate in dark pools, private exchanges where massive trades are hidden from public view. It's a shadow market where the real money moves, invisible to you, but crystal clear to them. This is the part nobody wants to admit. Hedge funds don't just play the game, they write the rules. They finance political campaigns, lobby regulators, and even install their own people inside the SEC, the Federal Reserve, and global financial institutions. When a billionaire fund needs a rule changed or ignored, it happens quietly, without a press release. They also influence market sentiment directly through media manipulation. A single headline, carefully placed, can move billions in minutes. And if you think those headlines are just news, think again. They're often strategic plays. Take the 2008 financial crisis. While the world watched in shock as banks collapsed, certain hedge funds made billions shorting mortgage-backed securities. Why? Because they saw the cracks years before the public. And in some cases, they even helped create the collapse by quietly betting against the very assets they were promoting. Stage 1 is about pulling back the curtain, showing you that the free market is a stage performance. Every trade, every headline, every crash and rally is part of a larger script. In Stage 2, we'll go deeper into the weapons of market manipulation, from pump-and-dump schemes dressed up as legitimate investments, to liquidity traps to cross-asset manipulation that moves stocks, bonds, currencies, and commodities in a single coordinated strike. Because once you see the weapons, you'll never look at a price chart the same way again. They will tell you that markets are random, that what happens on Wall Street is simply the result of millions of independent decisions colliding in a chaotic dance of numbers. They want you to believe that, because the truth is far more dangerous. In reality, the markets are a battlefield, and the people who win here don't just make money. They bend reality. They write the rules. They move the goalposts. They decide when the game begins and when it ends. At the center of this battlefield stands a gate. Not a physical gate, but one of access, of privilege, of information. On one side, the public. On the other, the architects. I remember the first time I glimpsed the other side. It was in an unmarked building, the kind where the glass is dark and the lobby is empty. Inside, the air was cold, the lighting dim, and there was a silence that made your ears ring. The man I met that day didn't look like a trader. No flashy suit, no nervous energy. Just calm, controlled, as if he had already seen the next 10 years of the market unfold in his head. His voice was slow, measured. He told me, in this game, speed is nothing without foresight, and foresight is nothing without control. That word stuck with me, control, because it was here I learned the first secret. The market is not one market, it is layers. The top layer, the one everyone sees, is the public arena. Stocks, indices, news headlines. Below that, a darker layer. Private networks, shadow liquidity pools, quiet negotiations between banks and funds before the public ever gets a whisper. And deeper still, the architect's layer, where capital is weaponized like a military strike, where algorithms aren't just trading, they're mapping human behavior in real time. The man at the gate told me stories of a certain night in 1992, when George Soros looked at the Bank of England and decided he would break it. Not out of anger, not out of greed, out of strategy. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even just analysis. It was a calculated attack, weeks in the making, using billions in capital as a single focused weapon. And when the dust cleared, he made over $1 billion in profit. The Bank of England bent, the pound collapsed, and a legend was born. He told me about Jim Simons, the quiet mathematician. While others watched charts, Simons built an army of PhDs, physicists, cryptographers, not to predict the news, but to read the noise, to turn chaos into certainty. The Medallion Fund, invisible to the public, delivering annual returns so consistent it almost looked impossible. No one was invited in. No one ever saw the code. And then there was Robert Mercer, the chess player turned codebreaker turned market assassin. While most funds were reacting to news, Mercer was building models that predicted human reaction to news, algorithms that knew how people would panic before they actually panicked. These were not investors. They were engineers of probability, and the public, they were simply raw material. But here is the part you will never hear on CNBC. The true gate isn't to money. It's information asymmetry. If you know what will happen 2 seconds before the rest of the market, you can be a billionaire. If you know 1 day before, you can be untouchable. If you know 1 week before, you can move nations. The man at the gate leaned in. We don't predict the future, we design it. And with that, I realized these people weren't playing the market. They were building the market. The charts you see are not reality. They are the aftermath. The real moves happen in private calls, encrypted chats, and code libraries that will never touch the open internet. From that day forward, I understood. Stage 2 isn't about learning how to trade. It's about crossing the threshold. It's about no longer playing their game, but making them play yours. The gate is not advertised. You will not be invited. It will appear only once you have something they need, data they can't get, influence they can't buy, a signal they can't decode. Until then, you are background noise, so you have a choice. You can stay in the crowd, chasing headlines, reacting to movements already decided hours ago, or you can begin the work, building the tools, the network, the mind, to see what's coming before anyone else. Remember this, the market does not reward the smartest or even the fastest. It rewards the most prepared. And those who pass through the gate never see the world the same way again. And here is the truth they will never admit. Passing through that gate doesn't make the world easier. It makes it clearer. You stop believing in coincidences. You start noticing patterns that most people don't even know exist. A sudden market drop isn't panic, it's a cleanup operation. A currency spike isn't optimism, it's a test run for something bigger. You begin to see the fingerprints. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. You notice how the same small group of funds appears in every major deal, every critical swing, every sudden black swan event. You see how their losses are temporary, controlled, strategic. When they fall, it's not because they stumbled, it's because they decided to step back, let others take the heat, and then buy the ashes at a discount. And here is the part the textbooks don't tell you. Markets aren't just moved by numbers. They were moved by narratives. And the architects control those too. They own the research firms that independently declare the next big sector. They bankroll the think tanks that write the policies. They quietly fund the journalists who publish the story that triggers the herd. You think Twitter sentiment moves stocks? The architects knew what you were going to tweet before you even wrote it. Their algorithms scrape the entire digital world, billions of posts, comments, likes, and feed them into models that predict human mood the way meteorologists predict storms. And then, they trade ahead of that storm. This is why the gate matters, because on the other side, you are no longer reacting. You are pre-positioned. You hold the umbrella before the rain even starts. The man at the gate once gave me an example. In war, he said, the first bullet fired is never the beginning. The beginning happens weeks earlier, in a boardroom, in a message, in a handshake no one saw. In the markets, it's the same. By the time the public sees a breaking news headline, the trade has already been executed, profits already booked, and the public is just buying what someone else needed to sell. But understand this, there's a reason they don't open the gate for just anyone. With this kind of access, you could destroy nations if you acted recklessly. You could trigger a collapse that ripples into every home, every bank, every job. That's why, in their world, discipline is the only currency more valuable than information, and most people don't have it. You might think this is unfair. You'd be right. But fairness has never been a factor in power. The architects aren't in the business of fairness. They're in the business of survival. And survival requires control. Control of capital, control of perception, control of time itself. Now, I'm not telling you this so you can become one of the crowd screaming about injustice. I'm telling you so you can start building your own gate, because the brutal truth is, no one's coming to save you. The system is designed for the architects, and if you're not inside it, you're being used by it. Your first weapon is awareness. Stop thinking like a spectator. Every headline you read, ask yourself, who benefits from this? Every chart you see, ask yourself, who needed this movement? Every time a billionaire makes a public statement, ask yourself, What position are they already holding? Your second weapon is data, not the data they feed you, real data. Raw, unfiltered, messy numbers. Hidden connections between companies, obscure filings, patterns in how markets react during specific global events. You're not looking for a perfect picture. You're looking for anomalies. The strange moments when the market behaves in ways that make no sense until you realize someone wanted it to. And your third weapon is patience. The architects think in years, not days. They build traps and wait. They lay groundwork for deals that will only mature once the timing is perfect. You can't crash their table and expect to win in a week. You have to be willing to move in shadows, gathering strength until the moment you decide to strike. Because that's the final truth about the gate. It doesn't open because you knock. It opens because they look at you and realize you're already on the inside. The champagne flutes trembled in the hands of those who thought they understood wealth. They didn't. Wealth isn't a number on a bank screen. It's a weapon forged in secrecy, sharpened in silence, and deployed with precision while the world is distracted by noise. You look out over Monaco's glittering bay. Yachts worth more than entire corporations drift like chess pieces waiting for your next move. Every light, every shadow, every whispered conversation around you hides a transaction, a negotiation, a manipulation of capital flows that the masses could never comprehend. While they scroll for dopamine hits, you move liquidity like a conductor leading a symphony of billions. The true billionaire doesn't chase money. He bends the timeline so that money chases him. You're not here for champagne. You're here for information. Because information in the right hands is more valuable than oil, gold, or Bitcoin. You don't wait for market reports. You make them obsolete before they're printed. Your network runs deeper than any news outlet, beyond the reach of regulators, and far above the algorithms that feed the public their version of reality. Every step you take through the Monte Carlo casino isn't leisure. It's reconnaissance. The high-limit tables aren't about cards or roulette wheels. They're about reading the eyes of sovereign wealth fund managers, crypto whales, and shadow banking kingpins. One glance tells you if the next trillion will flow east or west. One handshake locks in your position before the world even senses a shift. Your AI trading systems hum silently in the background, parsing global data in milliseconds, decoding volatility before it manifests. They don't just predict the market, they reshape it. This is the difference between rich and untouchable, between having money and becoming the axis on which global capital spins. Here in Monaco, the air smells of salt, money, and risk. Every yacht you pass is both a fortress and a throne. Every private jet above is a signal, not of luxury, but of movement in the financial underworld. This is a game with no second place, and the stakes are measured not in millions, but in control over entire economies. And as the moonlight glances off the water, you understand. Sovereignty is the only true currency. Everything else, stocks, crypto, real estate, are just tools. You don't own them, you command them. You've seen the surface, the yachts, the skyscrapers, the diamond-glinting smiles. But that's a distraction. Stage 3 takes you below the floorboards of wealth, where billionaires are not just rich, they are untouchable. They operate in layers of power invisible to the public. Layer 1 is capital control, not earning money, but owning the machine that prints it. While the average entrepreneur fights for profit margins, these people control liquidity flows, decide market sentiment through whispers, and influence entire asset classes with a single allocation. They don't just invest, they pre-position. If you know a crisis is coming in 9 months because you engineered it through supply chain pressure or legislative lobbying, you can be in the exact asset that will explode in value before the crisis even exists. They move in syndicates, closed circles where information is worth billions, where a single private meeting can change the fate of nations. This is not networking. This is coordinated dominance. The hack? Build access, not followers. Followers are noise. Access is signal. If you have the ear of the right 3 people, you can leapfrog decades of grinding. Then there's asset layering. The public sees an LLC. The billionaires see a labyrinth of trusts, shell companies, and offshore vehicles. Not for hiding money, but for controlling it with mathematical precision. They can shift assets across borders without triggering a single alarm. The truth is, billionaires are not gamblers. They are asymmetric risk engineers. They never risk $1 to make $1. They risk $1 to make $100, but only when the downside is mathematically impossible. The secret? Information asymmetry. If you control the data pipeline, you know when the coin is weighted before it's flipped. And finally, the mind, the true billionaire asset. They train it like a weapon, not with motivational quotes, but with real-time scenario simulations, mental rehearsals for disasters, takeovers, and hostile negotiations. They walk into a room having already lived through every possible outcome, twice. You think it's luck? No, it's pre-scripted inevitability. You think billionaires work harder? No, they think differently. They operate from a mental OS that's been upgraded far beyond the average human brain. The average mind is a dusty library. The billionaire's mind is a quantum computer, cold, precise, predictive. First layer, information architecture. They know the world is a chessboard, but it's not 888 squares. It's infinite. And to navigate it, they build mental maps of every power structure, every player, every leverage point. When you talk, they're not just hearing your words, they're scanning your incentives, your weaknesses, your patterns. They have trained pattern recognition so sharp they can predict your next 5 moves before you even think of them. Ray Dalio calls it believability weighting. He doesn't listen to opinions. He listens to evidence from proven performers and ignores the rest. Second layer, data leverage. Normal people consume news for entertainment. Billionaires consume data for domination. They read 10K reports while you scroll Instagram. They monitor macroeconomic signals like generals watch the horizon for enemy banners. They know when liquidity is tightening, when a currency war is brewing, when sentiment shifts before the headlines hit. Why? Because the first mover advantage isn't about speed, it's about preemptive knowledge. Jim Simons didn't just trade the market, he decoded it, feeding petabytes of historical data into models until they could see hidden frequencies in price action no one else could detect. Third layer, capital multiplication. For them, $1 is never $1. It's an instrument, a seed. Money in their world has velocity. They never spend, they allocate. Every dollar is tasked with a mission. Go out, bring back more soldiers. Jeff Bezos reinvested profits for decades, starving himself of cash flow in the short term, building a machine so big it crushed every competitor without a sound. Fourth layer, strategic obsession. Billionaires live in asymmetric bets. One win can pay for 1,000 losses. They place these bets only where they have unfair advantages: insider information, proprietary technology, political connections, or distribution power. Peter Thiel's 0-to-1 principle: don't compete, monopolize, own the market so completely that competition is mathematically irrelevant. Fifth layer, mental edge engineering. While the masses let emotions dictate decisions, billionaires weaponize emotion as a tool. They can feel fear and act anyway. They can feel greed, but wait for the perfect entry. They are masters of temporal discipline, delaying gratification so long it feels unnatural to others. Warren Buffett once said, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." In reality, that applies to everything: business, real estate, politics, even influence. Sixth layer, black book networks. Your net worth is your network? No, your leverage is your network. Billionaires don't collect friends. They cultivate nodes of influence. A single phone call can shift millions, even billions, without a press release. Soros didn't hope currencies would break. He had intelligence from the deepest financial and political channels. And when the moment came, he struck. Seventh layer, cognitive load offloading. They know their brain is a weapon, so they don't waste it. They automate, delegate, outsource. Bezos doesn't schedule his meetings. Musk doesn't manually check his emails. Their minds are clear battlefields where only the most important problems live. They understand. The enemy of billionaire performance is decision fatigue. Every trivial choice is a landmine in the war for mental clarity. 8th layer, control of narrative. They don't just play the game, they control the story of the game. Billionaires shape perception to influence markets, politics, even culture. Elon tweets and shifts billions in market cap. Bernard Arnault curates scarcity and luxury to create demand that defies logic. They know, control the narrative, and you control behavior at scale. Final layer, post-human perspective. At the top, money stops being the point. It becomes pure power architecture. The real game is, who shapes the future? Who designs the systems others must live in? Who writes the invisible laws the world doesn't even know exist? That's the ultimate billionaire secret. They don't just win inside the system, they build the system. And here's where most people fail to understand billionaires. They are not just rich humans. They are augmented minds. Every habit, every instinct, every microsecond of thought has been engineered for one outcome: dominate the game of leverage. 9th layer, asymmetric energy allocation. The average person burns their energy evenly across tasks. Billionaires focus it like a laser on the few moves that matter. If something doesn't create exponential upside, it's invisible to them. This is why Musk can run multiple companies. Not because he works harder, but because he only works on leverage points. Everything else is handled by lieutenants. The formula is brutal but simple. 20% of actions, 80% of results. 1% of actions, empire-level results. Billionaires live in that 1%. 10th layer, obsessive knowledge acquisition. While the average mind stops learning after school, billionaires are compulsive learners. They read like predators hunt, not for entertainment, but for ammunition. Buffett reads 500 pages a day. Gates takes reading vacations where he consumes 10+ books in a week. They absorb cross-disciplinary knowledge so they can see hidden connections others miss, a technique known as lattice-work thinking. One insight from psychology, one from physics, one from geopolitics. Suddenly, they have a billion-dollar idea nobody else saw coming. 11th layer, ruthless self-editing. Billionaires cut ruthlessly, not just people, but beliefs. If an assumption proves wrong, they don't defend it out of pride. They delete it instantly and replace it with the truth. This makes them adaptation machines. Most people cling to old ways of thinking like a security blanket. Billionaires treat outdated beliefs like a virus, dangerous, contagious, and to be eradicated immediately. 12th layer, invisible war rooms. Behind every billionaire is a hidden network of war rooms, small, high-trust gatherings where real deals happen. These are not on Zoom. They are in private estates, on yachts, in boardrooms guarded by NDAs thicker than books. In these rooms, laws are shaped, markets are moved, competitors are quietly erased. The public never hears about it. They only see the effects, months or years later when it's too late. 13th layer, time distortion. Thinking. Normal people plan for the weekend. Billionaires plan for decades, and sometimes centuries. Bezos built Amazon with a 10,000-year clock mindset. Musk designs rockets not for next year, but for Mars colonization timelines. When you think in decades, your tolerance for short-term loss becomes superhuman. This is why they can invest hundreds of millions in something with no payoff for years, while the average person panics over a bad month. 14th layer, opportunity inversion. Here's a secret most will never hear. Billionaires don't just look for what to do. They look for what to never do. By ruthlessly avoiding bad bets, they keep their playing field clean for when a golden bet appears. It's like a sniper not wasting bullets on targets of little value. saving every shot for the one that changes the battle. 15th layer, leverage stacking. Money is one type of leverage, but billionaires stack multiple types. Capital leverage, money making more money. Code leverage, software that scales infinitely. Media leverage, one message reaching millions. People leverage, teams executing without micromanagement. When you stack these, each multiplies the others, creating compounding growth curves so steep they feel like cheating. 16th layer, psychological immunity. The billionaire mind is armored. They've been attacked by media, betrayed by partners, sued, mocked, and underestimated, and yet they move forward without hesitation. This isn't lack of emotion, it's trained emotional control. They've conditioned themselves to never make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. 17th layer, perception hacking. Billionaires know the crowd is predictable, and that crowd psychology is a lever. They use branding, scarcity, and symbolic actions to steer mass behavior. When Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck, it wasn't laziness. It was branding and decision fatigue elimination combined. When Elon tweets a single emoji, he knows the internet will dissect it for days. Free publicity at scale. 18th layer, asset camouflage. The richest don't always look rich. True billionaires know visibility attracts attack, so they hide ownership in trusts, shell companies, offshore structures. The yachts, planes, and mansions, often owned by entities they control indirectly. Public perception sees extravagance. In reality, it's a fortress of legal protection and tax efficiency. 19th layer, crisis conversion. When chaos erupts, most people panic. Billionaires ask, "Where's the opening?" During recessions, they buy assets at fire sale prices. During regulatory shifts, they position to exploit the new rules. They see crisis as raw material for dominance. 20th layer, legacy engineering. At the final stage, billionaires begin building immortality through influence. Not in the sci-fi sense, but in controlling institutions, ideologies, and industries that will outlast them. Rockefeller's fingerprints are still on energy, education, and banking systems today, long after his death. That's the end game. Design the invisible architecture others live inside for generations. Because in the billionaire mind, the real prize isn't money. It's control over time itself. You've been told the markets are a game of skill, discipline, and patience. But in the upper floors of the most private buildings on Wall Street, the game is nothing like you think it is. Inside places like the Medallion Fund, there are hidden operating systems, invisible architectures that no retail trader has ever touched. These aren't just trading platforms. They are ecosystems of algorithms, quantum-level data pipelines, and predictive models, each one tuned to detect patterns weeks before they ever appear in the public markets. And while the average trader is staring at candlesticks, these systems are already positioning billions, not based on what is happening now, but on what will happen next. The truth is, capital doesn't just flow, it's moved, strategically, invisibly, in ways designed to trigger chain reactions across currencies, commodities, equities, and even political events. Billionaire traders use capital flow manipulation to force liquidity into places that serve their positions, while starving competing positions of oxygen. And then there's the AI war, not the one you hear about in tech blogs. This is the AI plus data war billionaires quietly run in the background. Private datasets no one else can access. AI models trained not on public news, but on private intelligence, satellite imagery, and encrypted market signals that never see the light of day. Layered on top of this is real leverage stacking, not 2x or 10x margin. I am talking about an architecture of leverage where one position S gains are reinvested in another sector in milliseconds, multiplying returns beyond what normal compounding could ever achieve. But the ultimate weapon is the information moat. It is not just about having more data. It is about controlling the flow of data to others. deciding what the public sees, what they think is true, and what they'll never even know existed. That control isn't just financial, it's psychological. And then there's time compression, the ability to condense decades of growth into a handful of years. The elite donatee wait for compounding to work over a lifetime. They engineer outcomes so aggressive, so accelerated, that they accomplish in 5 years what others can't in 50. This is stage 3. This is the moment you stop thinking like a trader and start thinking like an architect of reality itself. Because once we lock these systems into your mind, we move to stage 4. Stage 4. The black layer command protocols of billionaire funds. You've seen the public face of wealth. You've heard whispers about hidden systems. But now, we move into the black layer, the place where the world's most profitable private funds operate, without detection. This is where data isn't just collected, it's weaponized. Where every microsecond is a battlefield. Where you are not a trader anymore. You are an architect of economic gravity. Section 1. The financial black net. At stage 4, you enter the financial black net, the silent ecosystem of off-market intelligence feeds, invisible to Bloomberg, Reuters, or CNBC. Here's how it works. Billionaire funds tap dark liquidity channels where orders never hit the public tape. AI surveillance crawlers run through cross-border bank settlement data, predicting capital movements before regulators see them. Satellite AI maps ship movements, power plant heat signatures, even crop growth patterns, turning pixels into predictive market strikes. Every data packet is time-stamped, scored for alpha potential, and fed into quantum-grade decision engines. The result? Decisions made in under 1 millisecond that ripple across the globe like a controlled financial detonation. Section 2. Reality sculpting with synthetic markets. The true elite don't just trade markets, they engineer them. Synthetic markets are built on layered derivatives, hidden counterparty swaps, and market-making algorithms that control liquidity itself. Imagine being able to artificially tighten or loosen the supply of a commodity, not through production, but through digital scarcity games. Spin up a chain of cross-hedged synthetic positions that force other funds to become your liquidity providers. Plant false patterns into market data streams to bait competing AI into predictable losses. It's not about predicting the future. It's about writing it. And every move is masked behind offshore shells, third-party intermediaries, and encrypted execution pathways that look like noise to everyone else. Section 3. Commanding the temporal war stage. 4 players treat time like an asset class. This is temporal arbitrage, running multi-time frame attack vectors where trades on the microsecond chart cause ripple effects in the 10-year bond market. Freezing market reactions in one zone by suppressing data, while accelerating reactions in another. Using time dilation AI, artificially slowing decision loops for competitors by manipulating their information flow. This is not high-frequency trading. This is time-frequency warfare. In their hands, the clock isn't just ticking, it's bending. Section 4. Shadow signal dominance. Public traders obsess over signals, price action, news alerts, order flow. Stage 4 elites operate on shadow signals, untraceable market triggers embedded in IoT devices, cloud activity logs, and cross-app user behavior. Influence nodes inside media distribution chains, controlling the timing and tone of news that reaches markets. AI listening posts that scan encrypted chatter, not for words, but for statistical anomalies in sentiment velocity. Here's the real secret. The public market reacts to what it sees. The private market reacts to what it makes others see. Section 5. The billionaire neural mesh. At this level, a hedge fund stops being a company. It becomes a neural mesh, an integrated organism where AI nodes, human operators, and data pipelines merge. Each node is autonomous, but feeds into the central decision cortex, which constantly rewrites strategy in real time. Key traits. self-healing algorithms that detect sabotage or failure and reroute instantly. Decision fission, splitting a strategy into hundreds of micro-strategies to test every possible path before deploying capital. Cognitive shadowing, AI clones of rival traders built from years of observed behavior, used to predict and counter their next moves. This isn't investing, it's a living, breathing digital predator, and you are the apex mind controlling it. Stage 4 is not about money. It's about control over financial reality itself. The moves here aren't seen, they're felt, like shifts in gravity that no one can explain. And when we step into stage 5, we go beyond even this, into the space where markets, politics, and technology fuse into one weapon. The sovereign game board, how to operate outside the visible economy. You think the game ends at outsmarting the market? That's cute. In stage 4, you stop playing the market and start engineering your own economy inside someone else's. The real billionaires aren't trading in the market, you see. They recreating closed loops of value where they dictate the rules, set the price, and own both the casino and the chips. 1. The concept of sovereign liquidity loops. Public markets are just liquidity hunting grounds. The elite build closed liquidity ecosystems where money circulates only between entities they control. Example, a billionaire family trust owns a private fund. The fund invests in a private holding company. The holding company buys IP assets. Those assets are licensed back to the trust's other entities. The money never leaves the system. For you, this means you must start thinking in loops, not lines. 2. Invisible arbitrage layers. Everyone knows about arbitrage in price differences. That's amateur hour. The sovereign layer is policy arbitrage and relationship arbitrage. If you know that a government is about to introduce a subsidy, tax loophole, or change in regulation before the public does, you position your entity to capture windfall profits without risk. Billionaires literally pay ex-ministers, ex-intelligence officers, and strategic advisors for this. 3. The deep asset conversion game assets are not just owned, they're morphed. A distressed business gets acquired, stripped of liabilities, assets moved offshore, revalued at inflated multiples, used as collateral for another acquisition. This stacking of valuations creates phantom wealth that can be turned into real liquidity. This is how someone with $100 in assets suddenly has $500 in borrowing power. 4. Parallel data economies. The AI plus data war you heard about in stage 3? This is where it becomes your private arsenal. Billionaires don't just buy data. They create exclusive feedback loops. Every transaction, customer interaction, and deal flows back into their private AI models. While retail investors wait for quarterly reports, sovereign operators are running hourly decision cycles based on data no one else has access to. 5. Time distortion protocols. In stage 3, we talked about compression. In stage 4, we go nuclear, time inversion. You front-load all the future advantages into your present by buying certainty. Example, you lock in supply chains, distribution channels, political favors, and financing terms years before anyone knows they'll be scarce. By the time others react, you're not just ahead of the curve, you own the curve. 6. The shadow ledger. Billionaires maintain 2 financial maps. Public-facing, what the regulators, investors, and press see. Shadow ledger, the real network of trusts, offshore entities, swaps, and derivatives that tell the true story. This is not illegal when done correctly. It's strategic invisibility. 7. Narrative warfare. You can own a market without owning the assets. You just own the story everyone believes. This is why sovereign operators seed controlled leaks, independent analyst reports, and sponsored research. Controlling perception lets you control capital flows without touching the capital. 8. The AI orchestrated capital matrix. Picture an AI that knows what assets are undervalued before they rise, where political winds are shifting, which industries are about to get flooded with subsidies, how to structure tax-optimized loops automatically. That AI is not science fiction. It's running in private sovereign funds right now. And in Stage 4, your mission is to build your own. Stage 4 is not about winning in the market. It's about becoming untouchable. When you operate here, losses become almost impossible because you've built a self-sustaining machine that feeds itself in any condition. You are no longer reacting to events. You are engineering the environment they happen in. Stage 5, the sovereign capital organism. If Stage 4 was about embedding AI into capital flows, Stage 5 is about making AI be the capital flow. At this point, you are not trading the markets. You are reprogramming the ecosystem that creates them. Here, S, where the money you command begins to behave like a living organism with its own instincts, fed by data you control, protected by moats nobody can breach. 1. The shift from asset manager to asset architect. In Stage 4, you still operate inside the system. In Stage 5, you start building systems that the system depends on. Example, creating proprietary liquidity pools, internal credit facilities, and your own derivatives ecosystem that others must plug into. The real power is not in making bets. It is in writing the rules of engagement for those who bet. Action: begin designing instruments so opaque and so custom-tailored to your AI's pattern recognition that no other player can even simulate them without your permission. 2. Data colonies, owning the feedstock. By now, you know the game isn't data is the new oil. That's retail-level thinking. Stage 5 means creating your own monopolistic data colonies, private, hyper-specialized data sets that no open-source AI can access. You're not scraping. You're manufacturing reality, controlling IoT feeds from ports, shipping lanes, supply chain choke points, ingesting deep satellite imagery not available in public archives, tracking sentiment at pre-viral velocity before it ever trends. Core principle: if you can predict who will act before they know they'll act, you own their future decision. 3. Financial infrastructure capture. Sovereign hedge funds at this stage often quietly own critical pipes, market-making infrastructure, payment rails, collateral clearinghouses. If you own the bridge, you tax every crossing. Private APIs become your gatekeepers, and every trade routed through your architecture becomes a signal to feed your AI organism. This is reflexivity in hardware. Every participant strengthens the system that feeds you. 4. The invisible boardroom. Forget private investor dinners. This is decision-making in the shadows. At Stage 5, capital no longer needs public lobbying. It influences via algorithmic governance nudges, pricing a nation's sovereign debt in such a way it forces a policy change, moving liquidity in and out of emerging markets to set political tempo. The boardroom here is a mesh of encrypted channels between other Stage 5 level operators. You trade not just money, but futures of countries. 5. Time distortion capital tactics. You don't just compress time, you bend it. Leveraging AI to create synthetic futures, locking in favorable conditions years ahead by creating derivative cascades that self-trigger, running perpetual option ladders that regenerate without human intervention. This allows you to make 2025 decisions with 2050 foresight, creating a reality your competitors can't even perceive yet. 6. Psychological air superiority. True Stage 5 control isn't just data. It's mind-share dominance. Seeding narratives through anonymous research papers, think tank white papers, and orchestrated market rumors that trigger exactly the volatility you've pre-positioned for. The market moves because you made it feel like it needed to move. Principle: the most profitable trades are the ones that shouldn't have happened, but you made them inevitable. 7. The self-evolving fund. This is the ultimate evolution, an autonomous, self-healing capital organism. It detects vulnerabilities in its own strategies, patches them without human order, and pivots based on shifts in geopolitical, technological, and social vectors. You are no longer a fund manager. You are the sovereign steward of a living AI capital entity. When people speak of future wealth, they're talking about what your system already made 6 months ago. Stage 5 is not about outperforming the market. It's about being the bloodstream that the market runs through. When you operate here, every event, war, election, scandal, innovation, is nothing but oxygen for your organism. And from this point on, the question is not, how much money can I make? It's, how much reality am I willing to own? Stage 6, neural sovereignty and quantum pattern. Exploitation. You've now reached a point where ordinary rules no longer apply. This is the layer where your neural architecture is not just learning, it's rewriting itself. Your brain becomes a sovereign entity, operating outside predictable human patterns. 1. Neural sovereignty framework. At this stage, you cut the cord between instinctive reactions and your decision-making process. Most people are puppets pulled by emotional strings. You rewire so inputs are processed in a cold, algorithmic structure before execution. You begin neural veto training, the ability to intercept an impulse at microsecond speed and either amplify or erase it before it manifests. This creates a predator advantage. You can make moves your rivals don't even register as possible because their biology blocks them. 2. Quantum pattern exploitation. You shift from linear cause-effect thinking to multi-dimensional pattern recognition. Instead of predicting the next market move or social trend, you model entire scenario trees in parallel, holding multiple futures in your working memory. Your new reflex: detect when patterns collapse early, a signal invisible to 99%, and strike in that narrow temporal gap. This is the exact principle high-frequency financial warfare uses, now applied to all life domains: business, influence, positioning. 3. Temporal elasticity training. You train your perception of time to speed up in high-risk, high-reward moments and slow down in periods of information absorption. This allows you to execute faster than competitors when it matters and absorb 10x the data when you're in learning mode. Tools for this include microsaccade tracking, sub-second decision drills, and controlled time dilation meditation. Yes, it's trainable. 4. Multi-identity operating system. You now maintain parallel versions of yourself, separate mental instances, optimized for different environments. Example: one identity is a razor-sharp negotiator with zero emotional leakage. Another is a high EQ social architect who opens hidden doors. You switch between them on command without the lag of personality adjustment. To others, it feels like you are always perfectly calibrated to the moment. 5. Sensory field manipulation. You train to modulate the signal-to-noise ratio of your senses at will. In high-stimulus environments, markets, negotiations, surveillance, you suppress irrelevant input until only exploitable signals remain. In intelligence-gathering mode, you open the filter wide, pulling in details others miss: micro-expressions, tonal shifts, environmental anomalies. This isn't just awareness. It's controlling the input bandwidth of your reality. 6. Strategic black boxing. You adopt the black box operational model, never revealing full process, only outputs. By obscuring your decision mechanics, you prevent adversaries from reverse engineering your edge. Internally, your processes are modular. One component can fail without collapsing the entire system. This is how elite hedge funds, intelligence agencies, and covert operations remain anti-fragile. 7. Dopamine calibration protocols. Instead of relying on unpredictable dopamine spikes from wins or novelty, you engineer your own reward system. This is done through neuro-associative anchoring, wiring microscopic wins to massive reward signals so momentum is perpetual. The outside world loses its control over your motivation cycles. You own the switch. 8. Information field camouflage. You learn to blend into the informational background, so competitors and analysts cannot map your moves. This involves deliberate mis-signaling, releasing decoy patterns while real moves happen in stealth channels. When combined with timed information bursts, you can disorient rivals into reacting to ghosts while you act unopposed. If you fully integrate Stage 6, you will no longer be perceived as predictable human. You will operate as an autonomous intelligence, indistinguishable from a high-functioning Black Ops AI. And from here, you don't just win, you erase the concept of losing.